impediment. I think that's a bad name.
have to apply some thought, some really like intentional, like I need to stop and say that word. It's hard. So anyway, the story of me being beat as a child on the school bus was there was this older girl. I'm not gonna bring last names into it, but her first name was Heather. And she was I think she was in high school. Heather. She might have been a sophomore. I was young. I mean, I was maybe, I don't know, 5th grade, something like that.
I was hoping you were a lot younger than a sophomore.
Yeah. And I was teasing, I was teasing her. I was making fun of her. I was absolutely being mean to her. And she yelled at me and she said, "At least I can talk right." And then I had a backpack get this, I had a backpack with my rollerblades in it. She took that backpack and she began to beat me with my backpack and hit me with my rollerblades. And let me tell you, rollerblades has a lot of weird kind of jagged edges. You know, there's a lot of different angles to rollerblades. And those jagged edges were still felt in my backpack on me. So anyway, yeah. That's
Parker, she used your own.
Kristi, welcome to the podcast.
That story makes me so sad, Parker. But hey, look, you overcame. You overcame.
You know what? Did I? Have I?
I love that Kristi's so sweet. On my end, I'm like, well, I mean, you did have rollerblades. You should have been beat a little bit. So I'm glad you have both bookends here of how we think about this.
It's perfect. You're right. You're right.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm thinking about getting another pair of rollerblades. I feel like it's coming back. You know, is that just me?
Dude, with those locks, they need to be in the wind for sure. Maybe you can do it now. It's a confidence thing.
They're back. They are.
Well,
that's true.
We will. We'll go ahead and introduce our guest. So first and foremost, her husband was in my wedding. He was a groomsman, and I was in their wedding. And Kristi, Kristi, okay, you are you look people in the eye whenever you talk to them, and you genuinely care. Like there's such a level of empathy that you have with people, for people, and especially like I've always felt like you're like my older sister, because like the way that you just kind of like, oh my goodness, like Parker, yes, like come with us. You've just always been so welcoming and like an older sister vibe. And so anyway, Kristi, hey, welcome to Thinkless. Yes. This is Sweb.
Sweb, introduce yourself. This is gonna be good to have a sis on the podcast.
It is.
I have nothing. I just have one name. I'm the color commentary over here while y'all say smart things today. I'm very excited about this. Thanks for coming on. Also, I think we're right, Parker, where this is our first intelligent conversation because it's also the first woman we've had on this podcast. Is this correct?
It is. Kristi,
no pressure, Kristi, but you better not suck. This better be amazing.
The honor. Hey, y'all, Parker, that was so kind. Sweb, I just really like saying your name. Do people tell you that often?
No, not one time, but I will take that. This is working for me already. This is great.
Oh, y'all, I'm so excited though. I'm glad to be here.
Yes. Thanks, and Kristi, Parker. we ran into each other in Alice Beach. This was like a month ago, a little over a month and a half ago, something like that. And immediately whenever Zoe and I saw you, and the only way I knew that you were there was from your grams. And so I was like, oh my gosh, we're here too. So anyway, I was like, we have to see each other, have to hang out for a little bit. And then I was like, we need Kristi. We need Kristi's brilliance here in this space. So it was God ordaining that moment for you to be here and to bring wisdom to our listener and to us, mainly to me. Sweb's got it figured out, but I'm the young protege, still learning, still trying to figure things out. So anyway, Kristi, welcome to Thinkless. How are you today?
Hey, thanks, y'all. I do want to say, seeing Sainty Boy in the live and being able to hold and see those legs, those cheeks, and then seeing you and Zoe grab him and love on him. I literally came back to Dylan and I was like, okay, Dylan, let's talk. Let's talk. But no, hey, so excited to be here. I'm good today, y'all. I'm good. I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where, People
Let's
say
go.
y'all a lot, and we love it here. My husband is here, Dylan, and we have no kids right now, hence the conversation. But we do have a little runt corgi. His name's Kepler. He's a small guy. People will come up to us and be like, "Oh my gosh, you have a corgi, a puppy corgi." I'm like, "Yes, he is a puppy still."
Well,
even though he's 4.
Yeah, right.
But you guys are incredible pet parents, though, because like you guys are some of the most active people ever, and always riding bikes, always going on runs, always doing yoga, and I feel like Heath Kepler's there with you, like doing poses, like doing actually the downward dog. Like, did the downward dog come from Kepler?
100%.
Because
100%.
Yeah, because he's in your guys' life so much as you guys are active, as you guys are doing things. So I don't know, just apply that to parenting whenever you actually have like a real human child, and you'll be great. You'll be great.
Parker.
Where did you get Kepler from, by the way?
You know what? My parents actually have an English Mastiff. He is 220 pounds right now.
That's disgusting.
220.
Wow.
Yeah, Kepler's 18 pounds. But the breeder we actually got him from, or I'm sorry, the breeder we got my parents' dog from, she named the puppies after scientists so that she would remember who was who.
Right.
And I mean, I'm actually not a Kepler fan, but the name I am a fan of. And so, yeah, that's where Dylan
that's the only other Kepler I've heard of. I'm not like super nerd, but I'm nerd enough to have heard Kepler once, and it was a scientist.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where it's
all right,
from.
Good to know. All right, cool.
All right, Kristi. So we're so grateful that you're here. First and foremost, so grateful you're on. But we of course we just want to kind of stay in the same narrative that we ask all of our guests, like, hey, what are some things? What is a thing that maybe you would say that people just aren't thinking enough around, or aren't applying the right level of depth of thought to, or as we say, are thinkless about? So I'm just going to lob that to you. I'm just going to just pretend we're in a good old softball game. I don't know if you ever played softball. I've played some slow pitch softball before in my day. And there's been some softballs that have just been tossed up that I've got to swing at a time or two. So this is your time to swing, Kristi. Take us where you want us.
Thanks, Dan.
Well, Parker, right when you actually asked that question, when you said, like, how do we, like, thinkless is all about the mind. And right when you just said that, right when you just said thought, so where I was going in was the power and the understanding that our thoughts actually have on our emotions and on our behaviors. And right when you said thought, I was like, so much of what we experience in our daily life, our job, our relationships, our decision-making, from what I have found, especially in the research that I have seen, is that it all starts with the mind.
Yeah.
And so when we think even today, like, I mean, it's so crazy how this question can go so deep, or like we said, we can talk about ice cream and the flavors of ice cream and how important that could be.
That's important stuff. All right. If we're super honest about it. Yeah.
Had some Van Leeuwen last night. It was great. Van Leeuwen Oreo.
Wow.
So yeah, this understanding that what we think about, humans think about around 70,000 thoughts a day. There's some argument around it, but 70,000 thoughts. I mean, how fast is that? Just every second.
Yeah.
And if we are allowing those thoughts, that, let's say the negative ones, to live in our brain for too long, those have a great impact on our emotions and then what we do with it, our behaviors.
Yeah. So
I got to hang on.
Go.
I'm the new guy. So now you got to give me history, because you're freaking me out with the 70,000 thoughts a day, and I'm like, what the frick? Because I mean, we've all heard that women use a lot of words, and so we can. I mean, is this another one of those kind of cliches things? Is kind of my first kind of question. But then backing into that, why? give me why you're the expert on this, because as I just creep on Instagram, there's an MS after your name. There's this research-based coaching and consulting and designing and relational intelligence and all these words I can't put together with any sort of intelligence that you can. So I'm assuming you have some sort of either education or experience or just divine wisdom that's going to tell me why 70,000 thoughts matter. So bring me into that bio real quick, because now I'm already there with your 70,000 number, but make me listen to you, because man, my brain's hurting already. This is good.
Okay, Sweb, that's good, because when your brain hurts, that means you're molding. That means you're growing.
Okay, that's good.
Well, actually, I would love to come back to that. Okay, so background is in counseling, psychology, and therapy.
Wow.
So I actually used to practice cognitive behavioral therapy. So cognitive behavioral therapy came out in the 1960s by Dr. Aaron Beck. Still pretty new. Like if you think about the 60s, when you think about the world of psychology, 2022, we're still living in like some fresh field, of psychology, where people are still trying to implement research and really see what goes on in the human mind and the brain, because there's so much. It's so much. And I mean, even if I go to a spiritual sense, I mean, of course, God made us so unique and so intricate that we have so much still to learn about the brain. But so when I talk about the thoughts, Sweb, and how they impact your emotions and behaviors, it's this very cyclical process that Aaron Beck created in the 1960s. So what he believed in through his research was that we have so much more control over what stays in our mind. And I like to call it the inner critic. So those automatic negative thoughts. For me, when I am when I'm doing something maybe new, or I'm picking up a new habit, or even I'm stepping into a room like this with people who have so much wisdom, I think to myself, that inner critic, that automatic negative thought for me is, Kristi, you're not good enough for this. You're not good enough. Now that's mine. That's my inner critic that usually comes around. And so
that's mine too.
And it can be loud. It can be really loud. And if we allow it to sit for too long, I mean, if you think about it, if that's yours, okay, I'm not good enough. Then now from the mind, go to how that makes you feel. Pretty sucky for me. Pretty maybe fearful, like living in like the unknowns and like the negative what ifs. Like, what if I show up awful, or what if I butcher this? And then from that emotion, then makes the decision, I'm going to call Parker. Like, I can't do this. I'm going to miss this opportunity. I'm not going to apply for that job. I'm not going to be vulnerable in this new relationship. And then from that behavior goes back to our mind of, okay, well, that's what I felt. That's what I did. And I can't seem to get out of this. And so that is that cyclical process that we can find ourselves getting stuck in.
How many of those 70,000 thoughts, and I know that's a big number, but are you finding, or maybe it's just a guess, I mean, are 60,000, is it 90% of them are negative? I just feel like the world's pretty negative, but is that because I'm negative?
No.
I'm just curious, what percentage of the 70,000 do I need to really wrestle with?
Honestly, Sweb, that's a really good question. I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but what I do know is that our brains are wired in this fight or flight mode. So when we think of the negatives can show up much more powerful than the positives, because in a negative, our brains are telling us, oh shoot, do I fight this or do I run? So it's a greater human instinct to focus on those negatives. And like going back to the question of, hey, yes, our mind is dealing with these thoughts every second, every day. And we have the research that has backed up how to actually discipline ourselves, take those thoughts captive, replace them with a positive thought, and see the cyclical process transform because of that positive thought affecting now how we feel and what we do with it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I think it's really interesting, Kristi, because you said that this research is fairly fresh, but it started in the 60s. And I would say probably for most of us, like we would not think that that's fresh. We would think that, I mean, 60s, that was what, 60 years ago. So, I mean, I'm only 31. I'm not old by any means. So that's 2 of my lifetimes ago. So I would say, like that's actually fairly old, research that maybe is still applicable today. But of course, you said we're still learning the brain. Like we're still trying to figure out all of these different things. I mean, the brain is such a complicated thing. But I would ask the question, where do you start with addressing kind of that cycle? Do you start in the behavior, or do you start in the thought? Good. How do you work to really like practically transform some of those thoughts, and which place do you start?
Yeah, totally, Parker. That's a great question. So if we're thinking about what impacts our emotions and our behaviors, everything that we absorb, right? Like I think about even like the connection of the brain and the heart. What we intake comes through our senses, right? So our eyes, our ears, our taste, our touch. And so as we are, or smell, as we are intaking and making the choices of what to be a part of and experience daily, that is coming in and telling our brains, what do I do with this? So the brain's normally, it's always the first thing to begin the cyclical process, because what we intake goes straight to our brain, fills up our hearts, tells us, is this good or is this bad? So with that, then comes our emotion, then comes our behavior. So it all begins with the mind. That's why I think these conversations, y'all, are so powerful, because we're talking about what are we not thinking enough about? And those conversations are what's transforming people's decisions and their relationships and how they show up with everyone around them in their daily lives.
Yeah.
So we can see this of 2 ways a lot of times in the research when we're starting with the mind. I like calling it de-weeding the brain. A lot of times we can feel like we have like these weeds, right? And if I'm putting like a picture to it, when you think of all of those thoughts that we're thinking about a day, it can get really weedy up in there.
Yeah.
So I want my brain to be a garden that's beautiful, that there's water, there's sunlight, there's space, there's breath. And to be able to de-weed the brain, pull the weeds out of my ears, sometimes it will take one of 2 ways. Either taking these really small new habits of disciplining ourselves to write what that inner critic may be telling us, or what that negative thought may be telling us. So really taking pen to paper and allowing like that weed to be written down, and then writing a challenging positive thought, even if we don't believe that thought at first.
Okay. So walk us through like what that has looked like in your life. Maybe walk, like even just maybe a very real example. Let's get deep. Let's get vulnerable. All right, for a second.
I love it.
But one reason why I want to continue kind of digging this, because I really, really like that terminology.
Yeah.
Because even just right now, we have so many weeds in our backyard, and it's daunting. It is daunting to go into my backyard right now and actually like start the de-weeding process. This is just in my physical yard that I can see whenever people come over and they look at my backyard. They're like, wow, that looks terrible. And I'm like, I know. Okay. I know it's a process. So even like the amount of shame almost that you could feel from like, where do I even begin with that? Because there are so many thoughts. There are so many weeds that I need to de-weed. So what thought do I begin with?
Yeah, so, Parker, that's great. All right. And I want to honor, like, I feel like, Parker, you have a really big vision and big mind. Like, you see the big picture. And I think sometimes that's a gift that many people don't have because they're so focused on the nitty gritty details. And so for you to say, okay, you know what, like maybe there's more than one. And there are a lot of people that could be dealing with this. I've dealt with it in my own life. And so when we think about all of the weeds, what comes to mind, I've been researching a lot of James Clear's habit work. Have you all heard of his book, Atomic Habits?
Yes.
Great resource.
Oh, yeah.
Sweb, you haven't read that?
That's right. No, we did. It was an assignment, wasn't it? I feel like it was an assignment one day for me. So yeah, I read it. I've clearly blocked it out, but I do have it. Yes.
It's so good.
Oh, it's a great resource.
Yeah.
And so when we're thinking about de-weeding the brain, we're introing new habits into our life. When we intro new habits, or even learn something new, like Sweb, when I'm going back to hearing you say, okay, my brain hurts right now. Hold on.
Yeah.
Can we process this? Because our minds are in this process of still molding, still growing. There's actually research out there that shows us that the mind doesn't stop molding. It continues to change and form as we age. And so when we implement new habits or new ways of doing things like de-weeding the brain, we can at first feel heavy, like, oh, this is tough. Like, this is new. Habits are formed in our lives through the experiences that we've had and their mental shortcuts to be able to do things really efficient. And so when we're thinking about actually sitting down and writing something out, it can feel really big. And my encouragement in that, especially to my clients, is how can we process this and think of this in the small steps, in the small, the weeds that are the really easy ones, Parker, that you can go out and you just they come right out. They're the best ones. You're like, oh, so easy. Feels so good. Versus the ones where you're like yanking with two hands to try to get off your fence. How can we start with those small ones where, again, we're encouraging and telling our minds to say, yes, this can feel big, and I have the power to make this small and implement these small steps every day, knowing that it might feel heavy at first, but the heaviness is coming from the fact that I'm growing and my mind is actually getting stronger because of this.
Okay, so I got a lot of yeah buts. Not because I really actually believe the yeah but, because I tend to want to lean into this kind of thing and work better, but playing the sort of devil's advocate type of role real quick. I perceive Parker to be a very positive person. Parker talks me off the ledge. I feel like, I don't know, every 20 minutes sometimes. So he's a very positive person. I maybe you agree with this. I mean, it's not just the fun side of it. I think that it's just a different mindset. So kind of first, I might have a couple questions. Let me throw them all at you first, and then unpack them. However, and we can make this a 4-hour episode. It'd be fine with me. So because I feel like by comparison, Parker's more positive than I am. Does that mean he works harder on this? Does he de-weed his brain better than me? That's kind of one thing I'm thinking about. Like, wait, so is he just better at this skill? So I'm curious about that. The other, but maybe I'm hearing somebody just in my head, as they're driving and listening to this episode, they're like, yeah, that sounds like a personality thing though. Parker's a Enneagram 7, right? Isn't that what Parker is? So because of that, therefore I'm
a 10, baby.
You are a 10, baby.
So stupid. Terrible joke.
So it's easy for him, but since I'm the 8, and now I have an excuse that I just tend to think more than he does. I just have more weeds because I work harder. So is this, how much of this is a personality thing? Because that's what I'm wrestling with, is those yeah buts. Because what you're saying and the way you're saying it to me is so helpful in a very elementary way, and I mean that in a good way. It's very simple what you're saying. Like, okay, I can write this down. I can de-weeding, even that image makes sense to me. But I mean, we take 400 freaking personality tests a weekend these days to tell me that I don't need to do that because it's my personality. So I feel like there's this contradiction I'm wrestling with right now. Does it make sense what I'm asking that you just kind of speak to?
Totally. Yeah, it's like I was talking to Parker about this the other day, and personality tests, now I've trained in them, I've researched them. I wouldn't call it necessarily a personality test. I use what we call the Berkman assessment, if y'all have heard that before. So the Berkman, what makes it different than the Enneagram or even Strengths Finders or Myers-Briggs is the fact that it points out what your stressors are and what your needs are, which is so beautiful because it's what do I need to fulfill myself so that I don't live in a stressor of a certain component that I might face in a day. So personality tests can really work for you or not. And again, Sweb, it's wild how we can create a false reality based off of a personality assessment that we choose again to get stuck in. Yeah. Yes, the Enneagram has been shown to be very helpful. It's gained more popularity in the last 5 years than it has in hundreds of years or whenever it was developed. And so are we cautioning ourselves when we step into that place of identifying who we are based off of either what someone else is telling us or how we feel? Because again, we can live too much in those thoughts of, well, Parker's positive and I'm negative. Therefore, this is my identity. This is how I feel and this is who I am. And this is the hard conversation where people want their truths to be the truth.
Right.
Yeah.
When you might need to actually have the real conversation that you may have been living in that thought for way too long, where it's become a false reality. And now we're living in this feel stage of rather, hey, I've believed this for so long. Now I'm living in this. This is how I feel and this is how I am. Therefore, that's going to dictate everything that I do. And a lot of times, actually, those are the most difficult clients for me to work with. I love all my clients. It's very difficult because we have to get back to the brain and start in that process of figuring out who your true identity is rather than what you've believed for so long. Now it's become this false reality that is so difficult to get out of. Now your brain's filled with all those weeds that you're actually trying to yank off of the fence with two hands.
That's helpful.
That's super helpful because even I like that you brought the feelings into this space, and I mean we've heard it preached, we've heard it. You know, I've preached it before of like feelings are a terrible guide, but the culture that we live in currently is so validating for our feelings, and it's like, well, if you feel it, it is real. And now there is a place where like, well, the feelings that I do have are real, but how do I go from this place of moving past being guided and following solely my feelings and being able to trace it back to the thought that created that feeling? Because I like that you earlier, whenever you first kind of started talking, you were talking about just like sitting in a thought. And I like that imagery too, because it's like, I mean, right now I'm sitting and it feels comfortable to sit and it's convenient and it's easy. And, you know, we sit to have conversations. So I like that imagery, but it's like, how do you move past our feelings whenever our culture is so focused on our feelings?
Yeah.
And what is that? And you said it's some of the most difficult clients to work with, and that's true, and that's true. And so I don't know. This is super helpful for me.
Yeah.
Kristi, because I feel like it's easy for me to be guided by what I feel, and for want to feel validation for what I feel too. So help me right now.
Yeah, Parker, that's great. One thing that comes to mind when we're talking about this is truly the power of storytelling.
Okay.
So we have now taken in, I'm going back to our senses. So we've taken in so much with our eyes, with our ears, with our mouth, with our nose, with our hands. We've taken in so much. And when a client either comes and sees me and says, hey, like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm confused. What's my purpose? How's my leadership? How am I even leading my team? Everyone hates their jobs or whatever it could be. Sometimes we need to reverse what has come in for so long through our senses. And I think one of the things that we reverse is through words. and through really powerful storytelling, because it's not going to be an overnight conversation where you wake up and you're like, oh, okay, I have found my real truth.
Yeah.
But it's to really understand and feel the power of going back in time, not allowing your past experiences to define you. Because sometimes that's what happens when we come in. Well, this is what I experienced. This is what I know. So this is what's true. Okay. And what about the rest of your life? What about what's coming? So let's talk about it. Let's story tell. Let's story tell to hopefully gather those aha moments of those like life shifts, and almost like draw a line out of from 0 to 31 years old. And let's really talk about those life shifts that impacted you. And I like even giving them color. What were my greens that were really positive, really impactful? What were my yellows? I remember them, but they really weren't good or bad. They just, I remember them. And then what were my reds? Like, what were my reds that were really negatively impacted my well-being that I might even still be holding on to? Let's story tell our own story to somebody else who can help sit in the passenger seat and hold this space to begin to allow breath into the brain and air so that you can start kind of like moving through those weeds a little bit, hoping to get an aha moment. Like that's a lot of times where we start, because once we get our story out, once we see it and we've identified it, we've actually put color to it. We're hoping that that gives us now the space and the breath to open up to our future and say, what's needed now? And what feelings actually aren't serving me, feelings that have been connected to these truths for so long that I now need to adjust or challenge to live a healthier life.
Okay. First of all, that's really helpful. I love the color thing, by the way.
Yeah.
And I'm envisioning sitting in maybe your office with a whiteboard for 4 hours, just like going through this, like, well, let's just jot this down. And that's just real helpful. I'm going to actually do something with that later today. That's very, very helpful. Okay. Now, okay. I'm going to, hey, listen, Kristi, my identity is I'm an 8, and I'm just mean. That's what I do. Listen, that's how I feel. That's what I'm just kidding. But playing that kind of like, pointed person right now. Is there a place to take all the knowledge and things we've talked about for, the last 20 minutes or so, and then kind of make it prescriptive? And here's my context. I'm a parent. I have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old. Parker and I are asking you these questions, and, obviously y'all know each other, and we're just, hey, let's just learn a little bit. We like to learn, and, we'll share about ourselves, and hopefully a listener will be encouraged by that. But at some point, I want to, and you could tell me if I shouldn't want to do this, but I want to then go, okay, I'm going to make this actionable for my kids now. How can we, in a healthy, positive way, and again, a very humble way, not to manipulate a situation, but to come in and say, hey, listen, I'm going to use these, just already the few insights you've given us, to make this person's life better. Again, my context would be kids, but maybe it's a spouse or even just a friend. Does that make sense when I'm asking? Like, how can I not weaponize it, but use it as a tool? Or is it really just one of those things that, hey, they just got to come to this themselves, and then we just send them to your Instagram, Can we be helpful without a degree? Does that make sense?
Oh my goodness. So 100%. And that's what I believe we need. I believe that we need strong families, especially in today's world. We need strong parents. We need strong kids. We need strong units, strong spouses who are willing to have these conversations, have the hard conversations, rather than allowing sometimes an involvement that the world has such a great impact on. I think it's important to initiate ourselves. And now a lot of people will disagree with me. A lot of people will disagree and say, no, let them evolve the way they need to. And we have seen what's happened of that. And I've seen what's happened of that. And so even Sweb, the use of powerful questions with our kids, with our spouses, really incredible leaders know how to ask really great questions. to allow, again, the mind to really process and chew on something and then feel it and decide on it and process it with somebody else. And so even a question that could be so helpful to start out with your children could be, hey, so-and-so, tell me your kids' names. What are your kids' names?
Summer just turned 11 and my son Stellan, he's turning 8 soon.
Summer and Stellan. Oh, those are great. The family of great names. Oh my goodness.
Well, let me introduce you to a friend named Naroop, and he'll tell you about great names. That's another episode, another story, but okay. But thank you for saying that.
Go back and listen. It was great.
It's so good. So even like a powerful question of, hey, Summer, getting ready for school. Good morning. How are you? I love you. Hey, tell me something that you want to invite in today. What do you want to invite in? Could it be fun? Could it be patience? Could it be calmness? Like, tell me, what is something you want to invite into your body as you go throughout your day? And maybe there's even something that she could be feeling that you've talked with her about, that invitation could replace that feeling. So instead of like, hey, we're going to sit down, you're going to write your automatic negative thought, and then we're going to write a positive, challenging thought. The simple question of, hey, I hear you that you're feeling this. So what can we replace it with? What can we invite in to replace that with today? And that's just a simple conversation, a simple question to help even our spouse, our kids, our friends to really think and sit in this mindset of, what do I want to think and believe? Because I'm going to feel better, and I'm probably going to make better decisions that are then going to again impact how I think of myself and how I think of my life.
Good. Helpful.
That is really helpful. And in the vein of asking more of these questions, because I've never put that form of letters and words together. And what am I inviting in today? I've never asked myself that. I've never asked myself that. I've never asked anybody that. Like, hey, what are you inviting in today? And so even Kristi, for you, what were some of those questions that maybe were asked of you that you really grasped onto, and now that you're asking more of for the clients that you lead, of Dylan, of some of the relationships in your life that you are involved with and leading and empowering? Like, what are some of those other questions that you're really asking right now of some of those people? I'm interested.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I think one thing right now is, what do you believe you can do today? I think sometimes we wake up again and we think of around like the negative. What do you believe that you can get done today? What do you believe that you can achieve? What do you believe that's true about yourself? Like, let's really talk about this. What do you believe is true, especially when we're working with teams? So what I'm practicing now is what we call relational intelligence. I've kind of transitioned into this coaching and consulting world from therapy, where we bring relational intelligence experiences to individuals and teams. Relational intelligence is all about how we navigate our relationships. And the first thing that we do is really focus on who we are, so that we can build this trust and confidence within ourselves. And through that, we can then authentically adapt to the people who are different than us sitting across the table, or the person we're getting our Starbucks from at 6 a.m., or the new person we're talking to on a podcast. And so with these questions, if we're building this relational intelligence and we're first starting with ourselves so that we can see that this confidence and trust is building first, and then seeing it kind of transition to all of these humans that we face on the daily, asking questions, are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to show up today? Like, are you willing? Not, can you do this? I already know that you can do this. Are you willing to put the work in today, knowing that the work is going to be hard, but through this is going to be growth? Especially, are you willing to have the hard conversations?
Yeah.
If we're talking about relationships, we're talking about wanting to build a strong family, a strong team. Are you willing to have this hard conversation, knowing it might not be perfect in the beginning, but are you willing and committed to having it? What are you committed to?
I mean, I love, I think I like that. Are you willing? Because that we have a choice. You know, it goes back to the power of choice, where it's like, you're not, as a coach, consultant, whatever, you're not forcing me to do this. You're really asking, and it's on me. So no one, my growth is my growth. No one else can force me to grow.
Right.
It is truly ownership of my own life that forces me to step into that space. And those questions are not just thought provoking, but they're action oriented, which I really, really like.
Yeah.
And where it's like, okay, because if I am willing, then it's going to require something of me. And if I'm not willing, then I will stay where I am. And you know, we all want the instant gratification, or we all want the instant growth. We all, you know, we don't want to really, I say we, very, very general statement, but I think kind of, you know, what we're seeing more recently is just like it requires something. There's effort involved in order to acquire the thing that we want, versus just, you know, the convenience of paying for it, or just, you know, sitting and subscribing to it, or whatever. It's like, in order to experience real growth, real change, I have to show up. And so those questions of, am I willing? I think even just, I can write that on a Post-it note, put that on my bathroom mirror, and ask myself that every day. Am I willing to show up today? That's a beautiful question. Beautiful question.
I'm going to text you that later, Parker. I'm going to ask you that every morning for the next week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been thinking of you, Sweb, this entire time, of like, are you willing?
Yeah. I'm, you know, I am. And I'm going to go get rollerblades today because you pushed me in that direction. I'm willing.
Am I the only one with the rollerblades? Like, come on, guys. Like, did you guys not rollerblade growing up? Was that not a thing? I mean,
100% rollerbladed over here.
Yeah.
I mean, Tulsa, Branson. I had a girlfriend and played sports, bro. I don't know. So I did other things.
I'm not from Branson. Why did you think I'm from Branson, man? I said, listen, I've been to Branson.
If you set foot in Missouri, you're from Branson. That's all it's whatever.
Oh my gosh. That's
okay.
funny.
I have some other questions that are maybe, frankly, just not as deep, but I just want to know operational, a couple of like maybe quick rapid fire things. I'm a church guy. It's kind of the majority of my life has been in that context, in a quote professional manner. You know, I coach church leaders and I've worked on church staffs, that kind of thing. So when I walk into a church, I'm not able to always, at least not quickly, turn off the assessment of, wow, that's a terrible process. That's a terrible strategy. Man, I would have done that differently. Man, that sermon could have been a good 30 minutes shorter. You know, I go through that kind of thing. When you talk to people, is that what goes on in your mind right now? Like, wow, that person just is not thinking. Wow, that person's feelings are just, man, how many weeds does that dude have in his brain? I'm just wondering what a therapist, counselor type person with your sort of intelligence thinks about when you talk to people like me and Parker. Do you do that too? Or is that just me?
Sweb, to be fully honest, I am an intense analyzer for sure. And it's really funny because if I were to talk Enneagram, I would also identify as an 8. So we're challengers, right? Like we walk in and we're like, what do we see? What do we know? What can we challenge? What can we make better?
Yeah.
Very much a part of the strengths that you hold. So yes, of course. And like, how can I slow down in that moment is what I ask myself. How can I slow down to really be here?
Next question. Are me and Parker currently passing the test? Like, would you have another conversation with us if you happen to see us at Starbucks? Or how am I doing? Parker's doing great, but I'm just curious. Am I doing good right now, asking good questions? Am I feeling well? Like, now I'm talking to somebody who's an expert about the way I'm supposed to think and feel, and I'm like, holy crap. I'm so glad we're on a screen right now.
You know, when you've been into a conversation before and you were trying to listen to somebody, but you were trying to think about what to say next, that you completely didn't hear what they said. And you're like, wait, can you please say that again?
Yes.
Y'all haven't done that. Y'all have had eye contact.
It's true.
You have a dynamic of your tone and nonverbals. Y'all, you've been great.
This is great.
So great.
What? My boss that. Man, that's great. Okay.
Kristi, what you haven't seen is just Sweb's leg just like twitching, like up and down. Like
Sweb, is that your thinking leg? Is that like what makes you think that movement?
No, okay, I have another question, another hot button, or not hot button, quick rapid fire type of a question like that. Something that you've done the whole conversation day that normally, I don't want to say freaks me out, but it throws me off. It throws me off on the rhythm.
Yeah.
Is you have really methodical speech and you have really intentional long pauses. And I don't mean that in a weird, awkward way because, well, and some people really are awkward, but you're not. And it hasn't thrown me off today. And I'm just wondering, is that a personality thing for you? Or would you say that's a personality type thing? Or is that something that is a learned skill? Did you have that growing up and therefore, well, naturally I have to put that skill to work in counseling? You know, how does that work? Because you're taking us somewhere, but you're doing it at about the half the speed at which I would do it. And I don't know that that's bad. I'm just saying I've been taken by that simple mechanical thing today. And I'm just wondering, is that learned? Can I learn that? I know a lot of people who would love if I learned that. So I'm saying.
I actually think, Sweb, I've gotten the feedback that I used to talk really fast.
Okay.
And I remember being in my master's program. There was a class where one day we came in, the professor said, all right, for the next 45 minutes, you're going to pair up with a partner. You're going to look at that partner in the eyes and you're going to be silent for 45 minutes.
Oh, God.
You have to look at their eyes. Can't say anything for 45 minutes. I was like, wait, I'm a talker.
Oh, man.
That's hell.
Yeah.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah. Right. This was what came out of that class. Truly the power of silence and the power of pause. If we're thinking about the brain again and how much we're intaking every second, how much grace to our brains are we giving it when we take a moment just to pause or to slow down a bit to allow the other person who we're speaking with to be able to keep up or be able to process the way they need to, because their brain may process differently than my own. So I see it as a gift, Sweb. I see like the pause and the silence and sometimes the slowness as a gift to someone who might really be in this moment and really needing to absorb something that I'm saying.
Yeah. See, like right there, that's right there. That was a long pause that I'm like, I want to say something. No, I don't want to say something. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. You know, like it's that right there, but you're right. But I balance that, or I guess I fight with that of like, especially in this medium, it's a podcast where somebody's on the other end and there's probably like, I don't know what it is. It's probably 3/4 of a second or a second that goes by and our brains all go to like, well, technical difficulties, did something break? It's that kind of thing that I wrestle with. Yeah. And I even extrapolate that back out into even real life. Like if we were in the mall, like in a random spot like that, we ran into each other, started talking, and you made that pause right there, I immediately started thinking, holy crap, is there something on my face? And so it's this, and maybe I'm the only human on the planet that thinks this way, but it irks me. And I think it's probably a good thing. And that's what I'm learning from you now. I was like, no, like lean into it, think about it that way. Because for me, I'm like, oh, I instantly have to go correct something. Is my fly down? Is there something on my face? Did I say something stupid? Because this person is pausing. And instead of thinking about what you just said, I'm thinking about what possibly could be wrong with me or the scenario. So anyway, again, therapy session there. Parker, you say things now.
Well, Kristi, it's really helpful to know the why behind that, because I mean, Sweb, I think that's a great question, because I would lend myself to talking a little bit more slower. Is that slower, not more slower?
Yeah,
grammar.
Great.
Am I right?
Good grammar though.
Yeah, that's a good start. That's a good start. But I kind of lend myself towards that as well. But really, it is because people at one point told me that I talked really, really fast and were jumbled, and so I'm trying to be like, okay, how can I be a little bit more intentional with my words? And this has been a long process for me. But to know your why, though, like, okay, there was a 45-minute period of your life that you had to sit in silence and look at somebody. And what you took away from that was the power of pause, the power of really thinking about what it is that you're saying and letting it letting it kind of drift so that people can actually hear and resonate versus wait a minute. Sorry, you said that. Can you go back? Can you go back to that? Like, I think like every single word that you use it hits and it kind of lands.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a beautiful thing for just honestly for me and for Sweb and for our listener to be like, are we thinking about the words that we're saying?
Yeah.
And what does our cadence look like? Just a very mechanical type lesson with what does our cadence look like whenever we're leading a one-on-one conversation or in a meeting or leading a presentation or preaching a message or whatever that may be. So I really like that practical piece, being like, am I focusing on the level of cadence that I have? Because it matters.
Yeah. So good.
Oh,
so good.
I have another question.
Another hot take.
Okay. No, not a hot take. Sorry, I keep misspeaking when I say that, don't I? It's just like a quick, rapid fire ish short answer question. That hang on, I've now forgotten. No, I'm back. Okay. Practical, like maybe you have a stat for this or two or three, but we're talking about feelings and all the things that, I love that you talked about the intake. We bring it in through our senses. Again, a very elementary thing to say that, holy crap, why has nobody said it so clearly? Like, that's what happens. You're right. It's just we have these 5, I guess, classical senses that are just sucking in information. And of course, nowadays it's even worse, mainly because of the social media aspect of it and any sort of, I guess, media, even this podcast, somebody's taking something in, being distracted and comparing themselves to how you speak or the questions Parker asks or whatever. Right. So is there maybe some advice or direction that I don't know if it's you give clients or maybe it's just universal that you would say that applies to all humans? Hey, do these 3 practices today. Hey, here's a stat. It says if you spend over 2 hours on this, it should be 1 hour. Do you have any direction that way where we can limit essentially the weeds, going back to that metaphor, that just keep blowing into the yard in today's world where apparently that's just a lot easier to do. So give us some direction there if you could.
Yeah. That's a great question. When I think about going back to that habit conversation, James Clear actually just said it so good. And I've taken it, y'all, in my own life. And it takes a lot of work at first because especially as big picture people, we can see this one quote feeling like, I'm going to have to think a lot. But again, it's that first instinct or that first moment of bringing in something new and then really allowing our brains and our bodies to adjust of what this could look like on a daily basis. And then it gets a little bit easier because it becomes more efficient and we know what we're doing. He said this in his book. He said, every action we take is a vote for the type of person we want to be. So when I think of actions, I'm just going to say that one more time.
Yeah.
Every action we take is like a vote for the type of person we want to be. So what is the person that we want to be? What's the person that God says who we are? Where do I want to grow in my life? What do I see as my future? And so with this one simple question or this one simple statement in mind, this can support us in how we wake up in the morning. Are we going to move our body? What are we going to think about? What's our boundary on social media? Yeah. Did we get that notification that we've been on social media for 3.5 hours today? Are we staying in our job for too long when it's not serving us anymore and we feel the movement coming, but we're choosing to kind of stay stagnant and sit in it? So what is the action that I'm going to take? Because that action is going to support the type of person that I want to be. And even for you, Sweb, going back to that, hey, I'm an 8, if a client were to come to me and say, I'm an 8 and that's all I want to be. Okay. If that's what you want to be, then I can help you stay in this season. I can help you stay in this perspective. But are you willing again? Are you willing to see a new perspective and put the work in to potentially see what that perspective could be? And it's going to take actions. It's going to take discipline. It's going to take habits to start forming what that new perspective could look like. And you can decide if you want to live in that or not. And I'm here to ask those questions and again, be that passenger in the seat next to you to help guide you through this journey, this GPS that we might be on.
So, I mean, we kind of have to land this plane, but for me, and Parker, I'll give you the last word, last question. Take us where you want to take us. But I'll just say that's so helpful. And to me, I mean, Parker, I don't know how you feel. This is like the most on brand episode we've done so far for the thinkless side of it. And it just, it resonates with me so much because I've always had this sort of tagline. I had over the years, people had to point it out to me that I would say it all the time is I don't tend to tell you how to think. I just ask this question. Have you ever thought about it? Or the other way I would say it is I'm going to give you another way to think about it. And it's kind of, I even own the URL now that just says that. I don't think there's anything there if you go there, but it's like, it's just, hey, it's fine as long as you thought about it. And I love that you're just putting the ownership back on them. Like, hey, I will help you do that if you want. And if you still want to stay even in this unproductive state, okay, as long as you thought about it. And I love that. I'm a big fan of personal responsibility. And if somebody wants to do something that I would say is stupid, it's okay. It's them. They have the ability to do that. I love the freedom both in Christ, but also in this country. You can do that. I really hope you thought about it. And I just appreciate that's kind of the message that's been kind of the underlying tone maybe this whole time. And it's been very helpful to hear you say it in far smarter ways than that. But that's personally encouraging to me just to hear how you do that. So, I mean, hey, listen, I said at the beginning, don't suck. And it very much did not suck. So thank you for that. Man. Oh, that was just so helpful for me. But yeah, Parker, last words or comments to you.
So good. Well, Kristi, of course, so honored that you joined us. But I want to know what's something that's coming up that you and Dylan, or just you, are really looking forward to.
Oh, wow. What are we looking forward to? Dylan and I actually have something really exciting coming down the pipeline.
Yeah.
It's going to be a resource under my company. My company is called Here4Humans. And we are actually developing something that we are going to offer specifically around relationships. And we're working on that right now. To do it with your spouse is the coolest, hardest, greatest thing.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, you and Dylan's story is a very powerful one. And, we won't necessarily get into all that, but for sure, for all of our listeners, go to all of the links that we have in the show notes right now to check out Kristi. And if this really sparked an idea, you're like, oh my gosh, I need Kristi's help. Well, she would love to have a conversation with you and start diving into kind of what that looks like to work together. So anyway, Kristi, we love you. We're so thankful for you.
Yes. Love y'all.
Really honored to have you on. And you made my life better. So thank you for helping me think today.
Thanks, Kristi.